Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. So if you were in the last session, this is going to be kind of switching complete gears here. We're going to go back to the basics, go back to some 101 level stuff. So my name's Kim Brown. I work for Cochrane Supply. I am the Chief People Officer. And I've been working at Cochrane Supply for about 15 years or so. And in that time at Cochrane Supply, I had to learn what building automation was from the ground up. I started working as a receptionist there, and I've probably worked every job. And so now I'm in charge of our people and our company and how we develop those people. So Scott and I have really worked very hard on that educational piece, right? So we're taking some of the things that we've learned, how we approach just baseline, what is building automation, and that we teach our people, and kind of want to present it to everybody. So I do have a couple people up here with me that I've worked with throughout the years. So Greg works at Cochrane Supply and Therese is with Tritium. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves here. And yeah, go ahead.
My name is Greg Fitzpatrick, and I've been in the business for probably 27 years ago. I know I look pretty young, but yeah, I've been in business for 27 years. I've done everything from own my own consulting engineering firm to working as a commissioning agent where I ran my own firm. I've been executive director of facilities for a school district with about 110 buildings. And I've also worked for both Carrier and Trane as a equipment salesperson. So I've seen a lot, and by no stretch of the imagination do I know everything, but I know how our ecosystem works, right? And I've been with Cochrane for a little over 4 years now, coming up on 5 years. And I work in business development for IoT and integration.
So I'm Therese Sullivan, and I'm with Tritium, with a marketing position at Tritium. I come to this industry with a different background in that I live and have worked in Silicon Valley for about 20 years, and 10 years of it in smart buildings, various aspects. I've been with Tritium for about 3.5 years, and I really chose Tritium as a good place to put my energies because it's more or less a de facto industry standard for data normalization in buildings. Tritium goes to market with all the big equipment manufacturers, deliver a flavor of Tritium. And in terms of BAS 101, Tritium is right there as a foundational, Tritium's Niagara framework, as a foundational element for data integration, normalization, and visualization.
And at Cochrane Supply, we're a distributor, so we sell building automation products day in and day out. So we also have a lot of people that come to us and say, what can we do to train new people and teach them what building automation is? So not only are we teaching internal people, we have customers asking for these things, and we sell the Tritium products, and Greg is a member of our team that does a lot of education and outreach through the consulting engineering community and other things like that, trying to get people to understand what it is that we're doing. The last time we ran this session, we had people coming up to us saying controls is a scary word. And we don't want that to be the case anymore. So what really is it? So I'm gonna start with the next slide here. And just say, what is building automation? So we've got a definition up here that we pulled from Wikipedia, but at its core, it's pretty simple. We're taking the different systems in a building and we're making them talk to each other. Like Therese said, data normalization. How can we get the different pieces in your building so they can communicate together so we can make better decisions about what's going on in our buildings? And so that we have buildings that work efficiently, that are comfortable to be in, right? So that at its very core simply is what building automation is. Now, we all know it's more complicated than that because getting those buildings to talk and doing that work to do those things is inherently difficult. But at the very basic level, that's what the goal is. And that's what a lot of people are here trying to do when you're sitting through these different sessions, learning best practices on how to do, integration work. So this at its very level is what building automation is. So kind of started going into this a little bit too. So we want to take the different systems of a building, HVAC, mechanical equipment, lighting, life safety, fire systems, security systems, because those are all building systems that are affecting every single person in that building and how the building performs as well. So it's very important that we're taking the time to learn how these systems work, that we have equipment that is modern, right? So how many people have running across buildings that are still running pneumatics and they're just super inefficient? That's not really what we want the future to be. So how can we get these systems together so that we can have an automated building that just runs the way that it should? So, anything to add, you guys? No?
Well, one thing I'd like to ask is, by show of hands, how many owners do we have in the audience? Or owners representatives? How about consulting engineers? Okay. How about contractors or systems integrators? Okay, by the show of hands, how many of you are actually doing integration projects? Okay, nice. Well, one thing that Kim touched on was how our industry is changing, right? Our ecosystem kind of went through a lot of variations over the years. You know, she mentioned pneumatic controls and things like that. Then in the late 90s, when I was an owner's rep, Scott Cochran came to me when they first picked up the tritium line, and he brought this sorcery to me, and I couldn't get anyone in leadership to buy into it, right? Now integration, the tritium Niagara platform is pretty much the standard throughout the industry, right? So now we're taking all these building stakeholders, like she said, HVAC, life safety, electrical, security, and even lifting devices, right? And now we've provided this common platform to bring all of this information or data, normalize it, and then allow the owner to use this data, right? So that's what a true integrator is. You know, a company that has the professionals on staff, such as IT, such as electrical and mechanical, and they have knowledge in all these different systems and all these software tools or software packages, and they are able to bring them together and provide a data lake, right? Or be a data architect to provide that data to the owner in a normalized fashion.
And I do think too that, you know, typical technicians that have been working on buildings, you know, those boots on the ground service techs that are HVAC folks, that job is changing over time because of how the technology has evolved, right? So now HVAC technicians need to know IT. They need to know what a network is. They need to be able to troubleshoot controllers, not just make sure the mechanical equipment itself is functioning properly. So we're seeing that evolve over time too. So how can we get those people educated and understand what automation is, and that it is not just sorcery, as Greg put it.
Right. One point I was going to make, Greg, is that there were integrators, there were systems integrators for a long time, maybe many in the room, that it was a job because of proprietary protocols from all the big equipment manufacturers just in the area of mechanical delivery of air and water through a chiller, et cetera, that just integrating a Johnson system with a Honeywell system and getting that data and being able to say what was going on in the whole building, that was a job. But then there was the rise of the master system integrator, which it's not just the mechanicals in the building, but then the power structure and the meter structure. That might have been electrical systems, fire and safety systems, certainly. The master systems integrator kind of has to lift up and see even more of that. And Cochran's a good example of what a master systems integrator is. But yeah, what you need to integrate keeps getting a larger pool of data.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that it's been a challenge to get the consulting engineering community to keep up with controls, right? That's one of my jobs at Cochrane Supply and Engineering, is to educate the consulting engineering community and get better drawings and specifications out there. So, true story, when I first took the job at Cochrane, I went by one of the large engineering firms. I had a history with some of the people there, and they told me, Greg, we just look at controls like fire protection now. And anyone who knows anything about fire protection design at a consulting engineer's office, they just typically put out a performance spec. They make sure a riser diagram, spot a few sprinkler heads, and the rest is a performance spec. And that system, the responsibility of designing that system, meeting code in the whole 9 yards, is left up to the contractor. And controls over the years has become that to the consulting engineer. So what we're doing is trying to re-educate them now. Now that our industry has taken this sharp left turn and now we're going into IP devices, right? And now all of a sudden, technology is more and more prevalent on the IP or IT side. It's a very good time for the firms to get their young folks involved and pretty much look to have a technology person or a champion for technology in their office to make sure that the coordination between the different disciplines, HVAC, lighting, right, technology, all of those are being coordinated within that one office and start to clean their documents up when it comes to drawings and specifications. We've been promoting systems integration drawings, right? So what is a systems integration drawing? Well, that's a drawing that's going to show what the engineers like to typically call a front end, right? But the front end is different from what we knew it 15, 20 years ago. Now the front end may include a router, right? It may include a security device, right? Such as a firewall. It may include a network management switch if you've got your own separate OT network, right? All of that stuff's going to be in the quote unquote front end. Well, where does that get specified? Is it Division 23? Is it Division 25, right? Does the electrical look at some of that stuff because it's IT or IP technology? So that coordination, we've been helping the consulting engineering firms kind of sort through that stuff and know when to use Division 25 opposed to trying to jam everything in Division 23, right? So these are some of the challenges that our industry has faced over the years. And I think now more and more, we're starting to get the engineering community to adopt it because they know their risk is a little higher now. Because now cybersecurity is a huge thing because we're connecting all these systems to the internet, right? Got a question?
Yeah, I got a question. So we've done IP integrations a bunch. We mainly have a BACnet MSTP to an IP gateway, and that usually goes onto the customer's existing IT network.
Yeah.
And then we have to coordinate with the customer to make sure that we have our ports, our IP addresses, all that stuff's good to go. Usually, if we get a good relationship with the general contractor, mechanical contractor that we're third tier under, we can work with the customer direct and work with their IT department, get all that sorted out. But for a purely IP architecture, how do you deal with the fact that IT racks and for customers, they don't often come until way later in the job when you need to already be running certain pieces of equipment and monitoring certain pieces of equipment during the construction phase.
Yeah, what we've been promoting also is the use of a separate OT network, operational technology network. And it's called OT because it accommodates all the technology in your building, right? What is OT? OT is anything that's bolted to your building, any system that runs your building, HVAC, electrical, lighting, fire protection, or fire alarm systems, all that stuff is considered OT, right? So now the manufacturers are starting to move to all IP devices. So where's this stuff gonna land, right? You have a job with 250 VAV boxes, chill water plant, air handling units, no IT department except for some large enterprise customers may give you that many IP addresses. So what needs to happen is consulting engineers need to learn how to design a separate OT network, and contractors have to be capable installers to be able to stand up their own IP network. And we suggest solutions that have a graphical user interface so you can see all the switches, all the ports on the switches, lockdown ports and things like that. And we suggest a solution that has a topology that's flexible and allows you to future-proof your owner's building. And I call that pretty much an integration, a full integration platform. So when new technology is being introduced by all these manufacturers with all these different applications at the edge, there's a platform for all of this stuff to land over the next 10 years. Because what you don't want to do as a contractor or systems integrator is start installing old technology or technology that will be old in 5 years in your owner's building.
You know, I agree with everything you're saying, Greg, and I'd like to respond a little bit to the question too, is that the idea of the master systems integrator getting a seat at the table earlier in the design specification is something we really have to work for. I'm glad to see we have some specifying engineers in the audience, because that's the idea of thinking about data and your data structure right from the beginning is essential. So that position where you're kind of third tier under mechanical contractor, so the message has to get up to the property owner that for their own goodwill, they should move the master systems integrator into that initial charrette and say, what is our data plan going to be right from the beginning? I think that's really important. And historically, why that's been hard, and I think Kim brought it up in the beginning, like controls equals scary, even to commissioning agents and specifying engineers. It's been, I remember there was a famous article in ASHRAE Journal, out of controls, that they felt like they were, the specifying engineers felt that they've been enthralled, become slaves to the big manufacturing companies who had got into controls. And again, the proprietor then locked them in, locked their data in, and the whole business model felt like they were just in a silo because a decision had been made way early in the process, like we're just going to go with one manufacturer. And they often use a ninja as a symbol for the master systems integrator, because really that ability to say, no, you know, we know it sounds scary to not go with the out of the drawer specification from one of the big manufacturers. We will handle it all for you. We're going to go open controls. We're going to have a data plan. We're going to start early in the charrette. That all sounds scary, but it's really the only way to deliver a smart building today.
Yeah,
It is. And one thing to just build on that very quickly is during some of the sessions yesterday, a really great point was brought up that said, it's not always the what are you doing, it's the why. So a good question might be to ask that building owner, how do you want this to function? What are you hoping to accomplish at the end of the day? And by getting them to understand that in order to meet their needs, that they have to approach it differently than they have in the past. By just hoping it all works out doesn't seem to work. Having the right people at the table from the very beginning, you're going to get the results you want. And that's a hard thing for some IT groups and some owners to understand. And that's why at Cochrane, yeah, we're a distributor, but we're also an advocate for the technology and for getting people what they need versus just selling them a box for the sake of making a sale.
Yeah, and Teresa mentioned open systems. I know we have a lot of integrators out there. How many of you guys bid plan and spec work? Two. So most of your work is negotiated, and most integrators shy away from plan and spec work because of what Teresa said. There's a lot of proprietary specifications that are still out there, right? Because a lot of consulting engineers don't know how to specify open systems. They don't understand open systems. An open system is three different things. There's three pillars to an open system. One is open technology, right? Open technology. We consider open technology something like Niagara, right? Like Windows, right? Niagara is a technology. Then open protocol. Pretty much it's BACnet, right? BACnet is the flavor of the year. So we've got open protocol, open technology. The third is where most engineers miss, and that's open distribution. And what that means is you want to select best in breed products and solutions for your customers, where that hardware or software solution is available to an entire marketplace of people who could purchase, install, commission, and service those products. When I worked as a facilities director for years, and I had over 110 buildings, and we had control systems all over the place. I mean, there had to be at least 10 or 15 different control flavors throughout the district, and most of them were proprietary. And we also had a bond where we built a lot of new schools, and unfortunately, I got there a little late, but there were a lot of proprietary systems put in new schools, and a year after these schools were built, a lot of the controls didn't work. We couldn't change vendors, right, or change contractors because some of those solutions only had one person in town that can service it, right? So that third pillar, open distribution, is huge when it comes to designing an open system. And what we found over the years is that now the consulting engineering community is starting to learn how to design open systems, and they're not boxing their clients into proprietary systems. We're finding more and more integrators are starting to bid plan and spec work. But if you only bid negotiated work, then you are basically the consultant to the customer, right? You're their trusted advisor. And that's where being a systems integrator really pays off. When you can approach that customer and get them to understand that you're their trusted advisor, now you're providing solutions to them. And there's a ton of solutions out there, right? But it starts with getting the proper integration platform in place and understanding the hardware and software to accomplish that.
And I think, like Greg said, if you're the person that's negotiating with them and you have that relationship, then maybe a better way to tailor your approach would be to say these things that, yeah, we can offer you a more comprehensive package to get you what you want by starting at the top instead of putting controls at the bottom as the last thought, which is often the case, especially in construction. And using a platform like Niagara to normalize data. So we have this slide here talking about different systems in the building and how they need to talk. And the master sister integrator, or just systems integrators in general, should be able to tie these different systems in together by using open protocols. BACNet's pretty popular these days. But in the late 90s, like Greg was saying, all these manufacturers were putting out different product lines and they had their own protocols, and we built drivers to talk to all of them. Going forward, that's not something that people want anymore. They want to be able to not be locked into some manufacturer's branch where they're the only person in town, and good luck. You're going to pay through the nose. People want their data, and they want to be able to use it however they see fit. And that's why we're seeing a big rise too in people hiring younger IT professionals that are good at data analysis, in addition to, installing that as well. So those people can take those and make better decisions. You can get the key points out of there that you need in order to make better decisions about your building and how it's functioning and how you want to use it. I think talked a little bit about how does BAS work, but honestly, this is already a little bit dated because we're now really moving towards that operational technology networks that Greg was talking about. And we're seeing more people that are putting in OT networks that have to have cybersecurity as the forefront of what they're doing. Now, people still are putting in systems every day that are just standalone in their buildings. We see it all the time, especially small to medium-sized buildings. Sometimes that's all they want. That's all they need. But they still want their system to talk to each other, all that they have in their buildings. But more often these days, we're seeing a move towards cloud-based services, and you're going to see more and more companies that are also doing software subscription models. So SaaS is a big thing going forward. We launched a product probably 5 years ago called N4Pass, where we were putting a Niagara supervisor in the cloud. Everyone thought we were crazy. Nobody wanted to buy it for 2 solid years. We knew the day would come when that tide had shifted in the owner's mind where the computer sitting in the room, that mechanical room is the only thing that can access those systems. Now we sell them all the time. We set up a supervisor in the cloud for you, and that sometimes is replacing those supervisors that are on site. And that allows the owner and the technicians to have data real time. They can access it remotely in a secure fashion. And we work with them on all the best cybersecurity practices to make sure that they're not vulnerable as well by consulting with them. Do you have anything to add to that, Greg?
Yeah, she mentioned cybersecurity, and that's one of the buzzwords that we're hearing more and more and more, right? Cybersecurity, keeping these systems, I see he's laughing, right? Here's what's happening. Now we're shifting to IP devices, right? And you're going to be asked to stand up your own IP networks. You're going to be asked to connect to the internet, right? Because you're going to have to service these systems, or you don't want the ability to service these networks remotely. So there's going to have to be some type of VPN connection, right? So now you're putting yourself at risk. If you're a consulting engineer, if you're not designing cybersecurity or at least specifying some type of cybersecurity or firewall, right? You're going to be exposing yourself to a certain amount of risk. So what we've done, and I think I talked about it a little earlier, is we've started promoting the systems integration drawing, and that's where you can show it. And the systems integration drawing kind of came about by accident. I was working on a project 3 years ago, and a contractor came to me and he asked if I can help him lay out a system. Well, when I laid out the system, I laid it out, well, they wanted us to write a specification for an end user and lay out a system. Well, I wrote the specification, I put together the diagram, and I sent it to 5 master systems integrators across the Midwest. And I asked them one simple question. If you looked at this drawing at 3 o'clock on a Friday, and you needed to answer to your boss immediately whether or not we were going to bid this project on Monday, could you just simply look at my 2-paragraph narrative and this drawing and let him know whether or not you would even want to bid this job? And the answer was immediate. Absolutely. We wish more engineers would put out drawings like this. So for us, we knew we were on the right track. So part of that systems integration drawing is showing a physical firewall, right? So as a consulting engineer, your job is to express intent, right? But one of the other things that you like to know, and I think this is what scares most engineering firms away from controls, is that when submittals start rolling into your office, most look at those submittals and they look for BACnet and Tritium, and they highlight it and they stamp it and they slide it off and go, I guess it can get done. It's an open system because I see BACnet and I see Tritium. And what we want to do is take that fear out of the consulting engineer's heart, out of their mind, and arm them with the tools to put together a good job. So a nice, clean, solid Division 25 specification. And I say Division 25 because more and more jobs are integration jobs now, right? At the very least, you're going to integrate lighting. So if you use and get used to using Division 25 as a specifying engineer, or if you're a systems integrator or master systems integrator and your customer comes to you and the job has to go out to bid and he's asking you for input for an RFP or for a specification or something like that, you want to use Division 25. What Division 25 does is allows you to put the master systems integrators' roles and responsibilities in a safe place that's separate from the controls contractor or systems integrator, right? That's very good for projects that are going to include multiple buildings, like a school district, right? They may have a bond program and they're going to do 20 schools, but they're going to start off with 3 schools. Well, from a integration standpoint or from an owner standpoint, you want all the graphics, you want all the dashboards, you want all the trends, you want all the alarms, you want all that stuff to be the same from school to school to school to school throughout your district, right? So you want to negotiate a contract that's totally separate from each individual building, and you want to hire a master systems integrator who ends up being basically a consultant, or a data architect, right? Allows you the ability to work with one person, negotiate a price, and work with one person throughout the district. And now every building can come online with a separate Division 23 contractor. So those are the things that we're trying to do to get our arms around, quote unquote, that scary thing that everyone looks at as controls. It's not rocket science when you have someone that can help you get your arms around it. And we've written a Division 25 specification that takes all of the guesswork out of it, right? So if you go to CSI Division 25 and you look at that specification as a specifying engineer, and you may look at it and go, wow, what is all this stuff in here? We've cleaned it up. And if you look at our Division 25 specification and look at one of our systems integration drawings, they're in lockstep, right? So now you as a consulting engineer could put a clean job out there and you've got a pictorial representation of all the pieces and parts that you should see when you get your submittals back.
Yeah, I was just going to add to the idea of the job of the specifying engineer and do another one of your polls. Maybe you'll do it, which is how many people are concerned with tagging their projects? Yeah.
Tagging.
Pardon?
What do you mean by tagging?
Haystack tagging, brick tagging, metadata tagging. I don't know, like on the marketing side, I have to do Twitter sometimes. And if I'm at this and I took a picture of the crowd here, I would put it up hashtag AHR 2022. That's a tag. So all your data also has to be tagged, and it has to be tagged for equipment zone points so that eventually when you're doing it, so yeah, I mean, is tagging an important topic to you, or poll again? Raise of hands. You know, that's
Chad.
Right. Well, Niagara has a Haystack embedded, right?
Well, we support all of them. I mean, we have a lot of pressure to be this Switzerland type of software. So we have Haystack is definitely we support. Brick Schema is something we support.
Okay.
Google has something. Microsoft, it's Core something. So there's as long as you're tagging, I guess my message is, as long as you're tagging translation between one dictionary to the other or a custom, and all those things I just mentioned, they're all based on Haystack tagging. That was over 10 years that they've been working on this, realizing you can't go into every building and, you know, a light is a LGHT in one building and an ITE in another building. You're never going to be able to run any sort of analytics across your whole portfolio with that mishmash of naming for points. So Haystack group, open source group, was really early. They've celebrated their 10-year anniversary of working on this problem. And others are catching up. Let's just put it that way. But it's really a grassroots thing that every project that goes in, if you're going to be that trusted data advisor that we've been talking about, you have to also recommend a tagging dictionary and how that will be enforced by every contractor that comes on the building and defines where data is going to go, that they follow that dictionary.
And the good thing about our Division 25 specification is that tagging, there's a tagging section in that specification that's based on Haystack. So we do cover tagging. And if you don't understand the entire concept as a consulting engineer, and if you are an engineering firm, you do understand that you don't have to know everything about it, right? As long as it's in that specification, someone's responsible for it, right? You're assigning work with your specification. So Division 25, it does have tagging. The Division 25 specification we wrote, it does have a tagging element to it.
I will say too that piggybacking on that a little bit, but switching gears a bit, is through all the educational sessions that I sat through, and one this morning where they talked about best practices for master systems integrators and what that looks like. And with the ones that we work with hundreds of systems integrators day in and day out. We've seen them be more successful when maybe they take a second and take a step back and start with a planning piece. Again, going back to how we talk about planning with the owner, integrators also need to plan out their jobs better. People have a hard time, we've seen some integrators that put out directives for their employees, and they write standardization documentation so that when a job goes out and it's finished by that contractor, no matter which one of their technicians does the engineering or the commissioning or any of these things, they're getting the same the same result, so that there's a quality of work there too. So I've seen a lot of panels where they talk about starting at the beginning and laying out these things. What are your standards? What do you want your people to accomplish at the end of the day? And how do you want your product to be delivered? And at the end of the day, automation services are still a product for your customer. The customers' needs need to come first. We need to make sure their building is safe, secure, and comfortable. That the occupants in it are having a good experience, but that you're getting data out to make better decisions. So starting with a plan that says, here's how we do things, how we tag things, we have a standard that we use, or even graphic packages that are standardized, you know what it's going to look like and what you're going to get at the end of the day. And keeping it consistent does deliver better products, in my opinion. Did you have something else you were going to say, Greg?
No, you can go to the next slide.
So this has been what the typical BAS architecture has looked like for a long time, right? You've got mechanical equipment, those have controllers on them. We're wiring them back to other controllers, JACEs, that we use a lot for data normalization. So then you can tie them up to either a cloud service or a server where then you can build graphics packages or do engineering. We're seeing a big change now, as Greg mentioned. IP controllers are here, and especially with supply shortages, we've seen that definitely accelerate the adoption of BAS or of IP controllers in the BAS market. So this is changing rapidly at a very rapid pace, and using those operational technology networks, you're going to be able to get these systems online in an efficient, secure manner. But we're really seeing that this has been, it was a little slow, I think, but now we've got some really great products that are out there. A lot of building automation lines are leading with IP first nowadays. So you just shouldn't be afraid of that. We sat on through a session yesterday where they were talking about how, IP controllers may be a little bit more expensive than MSTP controllers, but you're saving time on the installation and the integration because you already have the data communicating in a way that is easy to access. You're not getting some closed protocol anymore.
Yeah, and one of the other things is that, and I like that you led with that, Kim, because one of the struggles, and I'm sure everyone in this room who's an integrator has experienced, is waiting on the owner's IT department. Right, so that you can deploy, I see all these heads go, so that you can deploy your software, right? Because we can't get things to communicate on our network until we get the supervisor up and running. So if you are standing up your own IP network, regardless to whether the job was specified MSTP or your group is used to installing and programming MSTP devices, I would suggest that everyone in this room that's an integrator, take a small job and cut your teeth on installing IP controllers and standing up your own IP network. The reason I say that is because you're going to see that you're going to actually save in labor, right? You're going to save in installation costs because as soon as your guys are ready to start commissioning your system, you can stand up your own server, right? Even if it's a temporary server and you want to deploy Niagara on a temporary server and you're eventually going to connect to the owner's IT network at one point, right? But you can set up a temporary server, or maybe it's an on-premise server because you're standing up your own network, but you're going to get off the job a whole lot easier. And now I'm sure you're starting to see more and more commissioning agents on projects, right? And now commissioning agents are starting to be a little more savvy when it comes to this technology. So they're waiting on you to functionally test their equipment. I know that because I ran my own commissioning firm for years. And one of the things that I would always find is that when I was ready to functional test, I would go out and start testing, and I'm sitting with some young tech and he's out trying to program while I'm trying to test, right? So now I've got to go home and find something else to do while this guy tries to clean up his program, right? Well, this eliminates a lot of that stuff because you can work out the bugs because you're not fighting time. Typically, you're the last guy on the job, right? You and the commissioning agent, you're the last people on the job, and you're that last 10%. And everyone's money's getting held up because the controls aren't working yet, right? And IP technology is going to clean a lot of that up. I guarantee you. So if you cut your teeth on a small project, it's the same after you deploy it as a large project, right? It's just scalable. So if you deploy an OT network and you've got your network management switch there, you've got your server, you've got your wireless access points, you've got your firewall, you've got your VPN connection, cell mode, whatever you need to do. Once that's done on a small project, it's the same thing when you move to a larger project. It just is. The subnet, we just have more subnetworks, but it's the same project. So I would advise that everyone just get out of the MSTP zone as quickly as possible. Get out. It's going to close on you soon. Get out of the MSTP zone and start deploying IP technology. It's going to increase your business, and you don't want to get caught in a meeting with a customer, one of your larger customers, and some C-suite guy has read a white paper and now they want IP controls. And you spent 5 years cultivating a relationship with this customer. You're their trusted advisor. And then they asked you about IP technology and you don't know much, right? So now they're going to move on to another systems integrator who can provide that technology for them.
Yeah, technology is not standing still. I know things get installed in buildings and they stay there for a really long time. We know that there's still tons of pneumatics out there, and it's still going to be there for a long time, I'm sure. But when you look at the IT world, turnover on devices is extremely fast. And I think they say every 2 years, the devices get half as big, right? So we're seeing a very, people are getting laptops every couple of years, 2 years, 3 years. That's pretty normal. Controllers are computers, and you're going to put them in a building and they can't just be left alone for 20 entire years until it breaks. So we have to also kind of try to shift the mindset that you set it and forget it, because people are in those buildings every day and they have to still be comfortable and secure. So as we move to IP technologies, yes, that it is much more sophisticated, and we're going to continue to see the drive in that direction. But we need to be advocates for the owners that know that this is the way that it's going, and these technology trends are not changing. It's moving more in that direction. People want buildings with more features. That you have smart enabled homes. You have devices with apps that you can do whatever you want. People want that in their buildings nowadays. You're going to run into that more and more often. So you have to, like Greg said, be able to be adaptable to that.
One thing, am I on? Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm listening to you both, and I'm also realizing that a lot of what Greg's saying is in the design construction phase. A lot of what Kim is saying is in the operation and maintenance phase, the full life cycle of the building. The role of, I hope a lot of you, and there's just tremendous business opportunity when you realize that you're really at the cusp of making that connection and actually changing a lot of what Greg is saying, changing a little bit the design construction cycle. As you make data available, through whether it is, setting up an IP network as Greg described, you shouldn't be the last, you and the commissioner shouldn't be the last people on the job waiting for things that aren't installed yet. Once you know, because you've installed the data, the general contractor, everybody can have a better visibility that everything has come together as it's supposed to. That remote connectivity that such a network can give you can really change and shorten the design construction cycle and especially when you get to functional test.
Right.
Yeah, we are seeing or getting feedback from contractors that are installing IP jobs that they're getting off of them so much faster, and they're saving a ton of time, not only in labor costs, but in programming costs as well. So these jobs are just shorter. That in and of itself is going to allow you to take on more work, make more money at your bottom line.
So yeah, the data has all sorts of ways to change the design construction cycle, and then in the operations and maintenance phases, as occupants start asking and demanding for more amenities that might involve heating, ventilation adjustments, lighting adjustments, more personalized spaces. You're again in the driver's seat if you have a open systems data network that you can count on throughout the life of the building.
Right, because gone are the days of the controls contractor or systems integrator just being responsible for the HVAC, right? We used to be responsible for the HVAC. Once that's done, the commissioning agent is finished functionally testing the chilled water system, the air handling units, and the VAV boxes. Now we're off the job. Now the integrations have become more and more sophisticated and you're integrating more technology. You're going to be on the job longer unless you can figure out how to get into this new technology and start understanding how to stand up these IP networks so that you can get your integration done, functionally test everything, coordinate with all the other disciplines, and get off the job. Yes.
Okay, so I was going to say, we have about 15 minutes left, so we were going to open it up to questions, so good timing.
So I've heard a lot recently on projects where the owners are looking more and more at open networks, where they want a single network system for their building, as opposed to having a separate network for their security, a separate network for building automation, stuff like that. And I agree with you. I see the benefit of having that separate network established early for exactly the purposes of construction and commissioning. But I don't know that that's aligning with what owners' IT groups are moving towards, which is more of an open network.
Yeah, and you know what? I got that question or ran into that resistance a couple years ago a lot, right? IP devices just started being prevalent probably 2 or 3 years ago. They were developed earlier, but the industry is started to see them more and more 2 years ago. And one of the first things the customers would always ask me when I talked about OT networks is, well, their IT department is going to want another fiber network in their building, right? Well, the first thing you have to do is get over the perception that it's another fiber network, because they already have, if you're a controls contractor or systems integrator and you're installing controls, you're installing a network. It just happens to be a 485 serial network, right? So now that we're using IP devices, you're gonna have to stand up an IP network. And whether it's a single point connection to the owner's network, and we're grabbing all the data from all the technology on that IP network and coming back to the owner's network in one place, right? One drop. Or you've got a totally air-gapped system with its own server and it's accommodating all the operational technology. You're still gonna need it because you have IP devices. Does that make sense? Because there's no other way to network IP devices other than IP switches. And as an owner or as a systems integrator, the responsible thing to do is to install managed switches and give your customer a solution that has managed switches and a front-end user interface, not only for their benefit, but for yours too. Because when you walk off of that job, if you are responsible for the data aggregation, that's your customer. Right? If you install that network, that's your customer. So when you walk off the job, typically you're going to try to upsell and sell your services, right? So it goes from just control service to network management services, right? So you as a contractor or a systems integrator, you want a solution that's going to allow you to manage that network as easily as possible so your margins can stay where? Here, right? If the customer wants to manage the network themselves, you are still responsible for providing a best-in-breed solution that allows them the ability to manage the network. So you want to look for a solution that's built for the facilities world, not the IT world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just get a feeling that from my interaction with some of these IT groups, they don't like the idea of having a separate network because now they have 2 networks to manage as opposed to a single network.
Yeah, we should talk afterwards, because what's out there now are IP networks that are made for the facilities group, right? For the facilities industry. So you don't need IT professionals involved in managing this network.
Well, to a certain extent you do though. You still have equipment, network switches, things like that that have to be maintained.
Yeah, but these aren't Cisco and HP network switches where you have to know CLI language. I think it's CLI language. Yeah, you don't need IT professionals to manage those, the solutions that are out there for our industry, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Products like Optico that has a simple network managed switch where it has a configurable interface. It makes it a lot easier. It takes some of that guesswork out of it. And they offer some training, like a 1-day certification and then an advanced class on that.
It's
And
pretty much plug and play.
yeah, and that allows you to very simply turn on and off the ports on the switch. And people use like that Optico switch to have all of the other systems like the fire, life safety, the lighting, the HVAC, all on that other OT network, and then they manage it through the switch, and then that can either connect to the owner's network or stand alone by itself.
So the most important question that you can ask, and you want to ask this early, and Teresa mentioned it earlier that you should get involved early with the owner's IT department. And I always suggest asking one question. Does the owner want to see the building technology on their IT network or not? That's one question. And from there, you're gonna install your controls, right? But if they're IP controls, you have to network them somehow. So if you have IP controllers, you're gonna have switches. You're gonna have IP switches, right? And if you install those systems, or if you install an IP network, now you have somewhere for all the other operational technology to land. So if the owner says, no, we don't want to deal with the HVAC or the BMS system, then there's no problem. But if they say, yeah, we'd like to see that stuff, then you ask for the same one IP address that you asked for if you had just the Jace in the building. Does that make sense?
I'm a recruiter in this industry, and one of the things I like to mention is the reason companies use recruiters is because they're having trouble finding the right talent. Mm-hmm. But you use recruiters to really hone in on specific talent. So what I'd like to say is it's been in the last year that a lot of my clients and prospects come to me and say, Skip, I need somebody who, say, in Dallas, who knows Johnson Controls, who's Niagara certified, and they know IP. That wasn't a question or a spec that they gave me 18 months ago. But really in the last 12 months, almost every time I get a rec now, a job order, that is being one of the, requirements in that specification. So I just bring that up to share with the group how important. And many of our controls techs out there do not yet know IP. So just wanted to share that with the group.
Thank you. I mean, and a little shout out to Cochrane Supply does a lot of training on that. And there's a lot of resources out there for training, even starting at the basics, what fundamentals of HVAC, fundamentals of building automation, or theory of building automation systems. Scott Cochran put that class together to teach himself by seeing gaps that were in the industry, all the way to the classes on the managed switches and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Smart Buildings Academy, Phil Zito does a great job with stuff too. There's some really great content on there. And I think what we have done that's made us pretty successful is that, the value we bring is by helping with getting people to understand the need for these things. So we spend a lot of time hiring people like Greg, that his job really is just to influence people so that they understand what they're getting and that they're making the right decisions. So what do they want? Well, we can guide you in the right direction if we really know what you're really looking for and what you hope to accomplish. So we lead a lot with just having those meetings where we're educating the owner and trying to find out their needs, but also letting them know what's out there and some best practices. And that takes a lot of time and effort to do those things, which can sometimes elongate sales cycles, but at the same time, you're going to deliver what it is that they're looking for by giving them that educational piece up front.
And one of the other things we do, if you're a systems integrator and you're thinking of moving into IP and you aren't sure on how to take that step, we will design your job for you. We really will, free of charge. If you pick up the phone, call me, shoot me an email, I will design your entire, I will design your entire project for you. I'd like to share a true story. A few years ago, I went and did a presentation on OT networks to a contractor, right? And rolled a solution out. They thought it was really, really cool. Set up a couple meetings with a manufacturer so their guys can get trained. Fast forward 2 years later, I get a call. And the guy goes, hey, Greg, remember that OT network stuff you were talking to me about? I've got a huge project that's all OT. The owner is a municipality. They don't want anything on their IT network. A consulting engineer out of Texas did the job. We're in Michigan. Out of Texas did the job. I'm looking at these drawings. I don't understand what he wants. Plus, I've got to team up with a local branch office, and I don't know how I want to divide this job. I met with him for lunch, looked at the drawings. The drawings were about 60% complete. The engineer knew just enough to be dangerous. I understood his intent because I understand the technology. If those drawings hit the street the way they were, right? Now, this controls group was with a mechanical contractor. The mechanical contractor had the job. He was bidding out the controls portion of it. They had already negotiated the job. He was bidding out the controls portion of it and told his group, I want you to team up with this local branch office and decide who gets what. I told him, you take that network management piece, take all the large IP controllers, because all the air handling units were IP. Some of the other stuff, what I like to call commodity controls, VAV box controls, air handling unit controls, those were all MSTP. So it wasn't a total flat architecture, but it was a combination of IP and MSTP. They wanted redundant servers and then one instance of the web supervisor installed in the cloud. I told him, let me design the entire project. It was 4 buildings. One building was 5 stories, 3 stories, 2, and a few other stories for the other building. I said, let me design the entire job, lay out the entire network all the way down to your subnetworks. What this will do is A, give us accurate drawings, Cochrane Supply accurate drawings so we can price this job accurately, because we can't price this job accurately from the consultant's drawings because they were about 60% complete. Plus there were a lot of other things that weren't shown, right? All the front end stuff, the network management, all that stuff wasn't shown. And we laid the job out, we priced the job for him, and he rolled those drawings out in the post-bid meeting and they were awarded the job. Well, one of the reasons why they were awarded the job is because the consulting engineer looked at those pretty drawings and said to himself, wow, there's a lot of stuff in here that I didn't even think about. These guys must have done this before. Yeah, I feel comfortable going with this contractor. Now, this particular contractor was a systems integrator, not a master systems integrator, but this job that they cut their teeth on, and this is their first OT network job. This is their very first one. And I advised them the same thing that I'm advising you. 2 years ago, I told them, cut your teeth on the small job. Now they have a big job that they have to cut their teeth on, and it's going successful. It's a pretty successful job. They're about 50, 60% complete, but the job's going really well, and they understand the technology now, right? They understand this technology. So I say again, if you guys are interested in getting out of the MSTP zone and entering the IP zone and catching up to technology, let us know. We can help you. We've got the specifications, we've got the drawings, we've got the capability. And I'm not doing this in a vacuum. I've got a ton of smart people back at Cochrane, IT professionals, that we run this by to make sure that we hold your hand from cradle to the grave and make sure that it's a successful project.
Well, we hit our limit. I think it's 1:30, so we'll let you guys go. We'll be up here for a little bit if you have any other questions you want to pick Greg or Teresa's brain. But thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it.